What happens when a nation emerges from war, possessing the greatest economic power on the planet, and decides to no longer hide its wealth? Not through words, not through military might, but through a car created to make the whole world turn and look. That car is called the Cadillac Eldorado. Born in 1953, the Eldorado was not designed to go faster than any other car, but to appear as a declaration. It was the embodiment of confidence, luxury, and the belief that post-war America had the right to dream big and to dream openly. After World War II, America did not just win with weapons, it won with faith. While Europe was still rebuilding from the ruins, America entered an era where money, technology, and mass culture exploded together. Americans no longer asked if tomorrow would be better. They were certain that tomorrow had to be better than today. In that context, luxury was no longer something to hide. It became a statement, and no car company understood that better than Cadillac. Cadillac, from the early 20th century, had positioned itself not as a mass-market brand, but as the standard of American success. If Ford represented the masses, Cadillac represented the destination. For decades, the slogan "Standard of the World" was not just marketing, it was how America saw itself. In 1953, as Cadillac prepared to celebrate its 50th anniversary, the company did not want to create just another new car. They wanted to create a symbol, a car enough to tell the world that post-war America was not just strong, but confident in displaying its wealth. That is when the Cadillac Eldorado appeared.
Here today, I present to you the magnificent 1952 Cadillac Eldorado.
The name Eldorado was no coincidence. It came from the legend of the City of Gold, where people believed wealth was limitless. For Cadillac, Eldorado was not a promise of performance, but an affirmation of abundance. This was America at the moment it believed paradise was no longer a distant dream, but could be recreated in metal, leather, and chrome. The Eldorado debuted in the context of American mass culture reaching its peak. Hollywood entered its golden age. Music, film, and television began shaping global lifestyles. Stars like Frank Sinatra or Marilyn Monroe did not just represent entertainment, they represented a lifestyle of luxury, freedom, and confidence. And Cadillac, especially the Eldorado, became the perfect prop for that image. In the early 1950s, when Hollywood was reshaping the American dream with studio lights and faces crafted to shine, Marilyn Monroe entered the center of the era as a perfect paradox, fragile, sensual, yet uncontrollable. In 1952, she owned a Cadillac Eldorado, America's most luxurious car, the ultimate symbol of post-war success and opulence. The Eldorado was not just a vehicle. It was a declaration that a girl who had grown up in instability had now reached the pinnacle of the American dream. The long body, gleaming chrome, lavish interior, everything spoke of triumph. But when Marilyn sat behind the wheel, that glamour came with a different price: isolation, the pressure of fame, and the relentless scrutiny of the public. The Cadillac took Marilyn to film sets, dinner parties, and red carpets. But it also reflected a bitter truth. Hollywood could give her everything, except peace. The Eldorado rolled through Los Angeles like Marilyn's own life, dazzling, admired, and quietly harboring tragedy behind its flawless, polished surface. It was no accident that the Eldorado was a convertible. While the war had ended less than a decade earlier, America did not choose to shield itself. It chose to open wide. The convertible top was a declaration: we are not afraid to be seen. That was the confidence of a nation that believed its power did not need to hide behind protective armor. In everyday life, the Eldorado quickly became a symbol of the newly rich, entrepreneurs, tycoons, winners in the post-war economy. It was not a car for commuting, it was a car for appearing, for being seen on boulevards, in front of luxury hotels, or at galas where success was measured by admiring glances. At the same time, a new culture was forming, the American consumer culture. Suburban homes, shopping centers, color television, and cars became extensions of personal identity. The Cadillac Eldorado did not just transport people, it affirmed their place in society. Anyone behind the wheel of an Eldorado did not need to say who they were. the car set it for them. What was special was that the Eldorado did not need racetracks to prove its value. It did not compete with Ferrari or Jaguar on speed. It competed on image. In a world obsessed with the future, the Eldorado was proof that America could turn optimism into tangible form. Looking back, the 1953 Cadillac Eldorado was not a car of restraint. It was a car of absolute faith. Faith that war was behind us. Faith that growth was forever. Faith that America had the right to enjoy its fruits without asking permission. The Eldorado was born not to solve a problem. It was born to celebrate an era. An era when America believed it stood at the top of the world and did not hesitate to show the whole world that. We have just spoken of the dream. Now let us talk about how that dream was turned into reality with steel, leather, and human hands. The Cadillac Eldorado was not created to optimize costs or production volume. It was created to prove that America, after the war, had the industrial capability to make luxury the standard. The production process of the Eldorado began with a very clear philosophy: nothing is too much. The frame was large, heavy, and solid, reflecting the idea that a luxury car must provide a feeling of absolute safety even when standing still. This was not the structure of a sports car, but the structure of an object representing power and status. Materials were chosen not for economy, but for sensation. Thick steel, polished chrome details were used deliberately. Chrome was not just to protect the metal, it was to reflect light, to reflect presence. When the Eldorado appeared, it did not blend into the scenery, it stood out from the crowd. Inside the cabin, Cadillac did not create a control room, but a mobile living space. Wide seats upholstered in genuine leather, soft and deep, designed so the occupant did not need to maintain posture. Everything was geared toward relaxation. This was not a place for speed or stress, this was a place for enjoyment. The dashboard stretched wide, with large gauges and bright metal details arranged so the driver did not need to focus too much on operations. The Eldorado did not require the driver to conquer the car. On the contrary, the car served the driver. That was how Cadillac defined luxury, when power does not need effort. Paint was a separate chapter in the Eldorado story. Instead of dark, restrained colors, Cadillac chose bright, fresh shades with a futuristic feel. Paint was not just to finish the surface, but to express the post-war optimistic spirit. Each layer of paint was an affirmation that this was the era of color, no longer the era of gray ashes and anxiety. Even the production pace reflected the Eldorado's status. This was not a mass-market model. Each one was finished with a high level of care, for customers who did not need to ask how many were produced, but only cared about, what does this one say about me? The name Eldorado tied the whole philosophy together. Not a technical code, not a dry designation. Eldorado was a legend, the city of gold in human imagination. When Cadillac named this car, they were not talking about performance or specs. They were talking about limitless dreams. The Eldorado was not created to endure through generations as a tool. It was created to mark a moment. The moment when America believed its industry, resources, and wealth were endless. And in that moment, the Cadillac Eldorado was crafted not just as a car, but as a rolling declaration. The Cadillac Eldorado did not need a long time to become an icon. From the moment it appeared, it was recognized as the condensed image of post-war America, wealthy, confident, and unafraid to display success. But the greatest value of the Eldorado lies not in how long it was admired, but in how it reflected an era. In the years that followed, the Eldorado was not just a model, it became the visual language of American soft power. On Hollywood screens, in advertisements, and in high society life, the Eldorado represented having arrived. Without needing to prove through speed or victories, the car affirmed status through presence alone. Just parking in front of a hotel or cruising down a boulevard completed the message. The influence of the Eldorado quickly spread throughout the American auto industry. The futuristic design language, long bodies, bright chrome details, aviation inspiration, became the dominant trend throughout the 1950s and 1960s. The mindset of bigger is better was reinforced. Cars were not just for driving, but for being seen. In that way, the Eldorado shaped an entire national aesthetic. But it was at that very peak that the paradox began to emerge. The excess that the Eldorado represented also brought unavoidable consequences. Cars grew ever larger and heavier. Fuel was consumed as if it would never run out. Cities expanded around wheels, and society grew accustomed to a lifestyle based on constant display. The Eldorado did not cause those consequences alone, but it was the clearest symbol of that mindset. As the world moved into later decades, especially when energy crises and economic limits appeared, the image that the Eldorado once represented began to be questioned. Not because the car was wrong, but because the era had changed. The dream of infinity had to face the reality of limits. Looking back from the present, the 1953 Cadillac Eldorado does not need defense or justification. It is the honest product of the historical moment it belonged to, a moment when America believed the future could be designed, controlled, and enjoyed without hesitation. The Eldorado did not predict the future. It recorded people's faith in that future. The greatest legacy of the Eldorado does not lie in its bright chrome details or convertible silhouette. It lies in the historical lesson that every civilization has its moment of absolute confidence, and that moment, when looked back upon, allows us to better understand who we once were.
Stunning craftsmanship on that Eldorado.
The Cadillac Eldorado was not just the car of an era of prosperity. It was the milestone of a collective faith, the faith that America at that time had reached the pinnacle and did not hesitate to show the whole world that. And sometimes, understanding history is not about judging right or wrong, but about recognizing that there are cars not born to drive forever forward, but to stand still, like a mirror, reflecting the moment a nation believed absolutely in itself.